Imagine what happens if you simply disappear from someone's life one day. This isn't about physical disappearance, but about severing the invisible ties that bind you to others. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you decided to distance yourself? Not out of hatred or resentment, but simply out of a need for solitude. Many don't realize that distance possesses a strange, almost disturbing power. It's as if leaving someone's orbit disrupts a fragile balance. It's not just about being missed, but about something bigger, darker, and deeper that touches the most sensitive chords of the soul. When you decide to distance yourself, you leave a void, and a void always causes discomfort, not because of what is missing, but because of what it reveals. The intrigue lies in the fact that your absence hurts not because of who you were to others, but because they can no longer project onto you. Make no mistake, people see you not as you are, but as they need you to be. You become a mirror in which their complexes, hidden desires, and expectations are reflected. When you decide to distance yourself, they are left not with the emptiness you left behind, but with the shattered reflection that you once held before them. Think about this revelation. How often in life have each of us heard assurances of our own importance and indispensability, acknowledgments that they cannot do without us? However, if you look more closely, doesn't it feel like these words hide the speaker's concern for themselves rather than a genuine recognition of the other person's value? When an individual decides to distance themselves, it's as if they are destroying a carefully constructed illusion. And then those around them begin to experience a range of feelings that they find difficult to explain. This may be a vague anxiety, flashes of anger, a crushing sense of guilt, or even a primal fear. But behind all this variety of emotions lies the main question that they dare not ask aloud: what will remain of myself if you are not around? Indeed, it is disturbing to realize that someone's dependence on you is dictated not by love or genuine spiritual closeness, but by the fact that you serve as a support, helping them avoid facing their own internal problems. Unfortunately, this is the reality underlying many human relationships. People are mirrors in which the virtues and shortcomings of others are reflected, but at the same time, they can also be crutches, allowing them not to face life's difficulties head-on. When a person makes the decision to let go of a situation, when they consciously step aside, they inevitably cause others to falter, to face the truth that they have stubbornly tried to ignore. And this truth is that their emotional dependence was directed not at a specific person, but at a certain idealized image that this person represented. And so we are faced with a difficult question: what feelings do people really experience when you disappear from their lives? Someone will say that it is sadness, others will point to disappointment, and some may even feel resentment. However, the truth is that they themselves do not fully understand their emotions, because the emptiness that arises after your departure has no clear shape. It is not the pain that can be easily identified, not the wound that can be simply healed, but something much deeper and more primal. It is like an echo of what they subconsciously tried to deny. What thoughts arise in their heads when you make the decision to leave? What dark sides do you awaken in their souls? And, more importantly, why does this seemingly simple step aside have such a powerful force? Why does it cause such a storm of emotions in their hearts? Today we will not discuss superficial things and stay at the level of the obvious. Our goal is to explore the deep processes that occur at the moment of your departure, to understand what those around you feel, what they dare not say aloud, what they are trying to hide. And, above all, we will try to understand why this act, which seems so insignificant, is able to expose the darkest corners of their psyche. Prepare for this to be a difficult journey. There are no simple answers or truths here that will not make you feel uncomfortable. This is a dive into the depths of human emotions, into those zones that most people prefer to avoid. But if you are here, then something inside you already understands: stepping aside does not just change your life, it has a colossal impact on the world of those who do not know how to exist without you. It is this complex puzzle that we have to solve. When someone decides to distance themselves, those around them begin to create their own interpretations of their actions. These interpretations rarely reflect the true essence of the departed person, focusing instead on the role they played in the lives of these people and what they lose with their departure. They seem to be trying to fill the void with imagined images, sometimes completely out of touch with reality. An analysis begins, searching for hidden motives and patterns to explain the departed's decision. However, the true goal of these efforts is not to understand him, but to justify their own feelings and actions. His absence forces people to confront the uncomfortable question: how much did their emotional well-being depend on this person? For many, this question proves painful. In an effort to appear strong, independent, and self-sufficient, they are forced to admit their dependence, which causes discomfort. And then the perception of the departed person begins to transform, not because of his changes, but because of the need to create an acceptable version of what happened. Some idealize him, as if his absence makes him more valuable than he actually was. Others, on the contrary, demonize him, convincing themselves of the selfishness and even betrayal of his departure. Deep down, it is easier for them to blame him than to admit the destabilizing effect of his decision. Interestingly, these emotions manifest unevenly. People's reactions depend on what the departed person meant in their lives. For some, his absence is like an unhealed wound, for others, like a wound that they thought had healed, but reopened. And for a few, it is a mirror reflecting their greatest fear, being left alone with themselves. This is the depth of the problem. It's not just about the response of those around them, but about the evolution of these responses over time. Initially, anger or confusion may erupt, but over time, the absence takes on an increasingly abstract character. They begin to doubt how well they knew the person, or whether they simply endowed him with qualities they wanted to see. And this doubt can consume them, because departure is not just a physical disappearance, but also a symbolic act. It marks a change in the established dynamic, a change that occurred outside of their control, and loss of control, as we know, always entails anxiety. Paradoxically, people often don't even realize why the decision to leave affects them so much. In their minds, the person who left did not play such a significant role, did not occupy such a large place in their lives. However, his departure exposes the fact that he occupied much more space than they were willing to admit. It's as if his absence highlights flaws in their emotional structure, the very ones they always sought to hide. And the feelings they experience are not so much related to the departed as to what his departure forces them to face. At the very heart of a person's departure lies something deeply disturbing, a kind of test of the strength of the bonds that remain behind. Often, absence reveals an ugly truth about the nature of human relationships. It turns out that many of them are built not on the foundation of unconditional love and mutual respect, but on the shaky ground of convenience, power ambitions, and unspoken needs. And when an individual decides to destroy this fragile structure, those around them lose not just a loved one, but an entire support system, a kind of fulcrum, the very balance that he unwittingly helped to maintain. A logical question arises, which many prefer to avoid: what will remain of these people when this person is no longer around? For some, the answer is simple and obvious: they will continue their journey, find new connections, and adapt their lives to the new realities. However, for others, the departure leaves a gaping void that they cannot fill. The presence of this person became a kind of anchor, holding back something much larger, a structure that begins to crumble in his absence. The irony is that this experience of separation affects both sides. It's not just about how those around them feel the absence, but also about how the departing person himself feels the consequences of his decision. But that is a completely different story that requires separate consideration. In this case, the emphasis is on those who remain, on the feelings and thoughts that the departure of a loved one evokes in them, on the changes that occur in their lives. And it should be recognized that this influence is much deeper and more significant than it may seem at first glance. When a person decides to leave, he not only entails changes in the fates of those around him, but also becomes the source of a whole range of hidden emotions. Like a clap of thunder that initially seems silent but makes the earth tremble, his absence triggers deep processes in the souls of those who remain. Even if they don't admit it aloud, something begins inside them that they cannot stop. The first reaction is often denial. People convince themselves that this is only a temporary separation, that everything will return to normal. They try to assure themselves of the insignificance of what happened, but deep down they are already gnawed by anxiety. They sense that something has changed, and this feeling of uncertainty, this question of why, becomes a seed of doubt that gradually sprouts. Did they make a mistake? Were they too demanding? Did they fail to appreciate? These questions give rise to anxiety and confusion. But there is another, no less interesting aspect: a person's departure forces those around them to rethink their own identity. When people spend time together, their energies intertwine, their presence becomes part of each other's lives. And when one of them leaves, the others lose not only their company, but also a part of themselves, the part that was formed in their shared existence. Restoring this lost part turns out to be a difficult task. They have to redefine who they are without that person. And here something almost poetic happens: an image of the departed begins to form in people's memories, but not as they really were, but as they need to remember them. Everyone creates their own version, which corresponds to their personal history, their pain, and their understanding of the reasons for the separation. Some idealize the departed, remembering them as perfect and necessary, whom they fail to appreciate. Others, on the contrary, demonize them, accusing them of indifference and neglect. And only a few, the bravest, find the strength to face the truth and admit that perhaps they never understood what that person needed. At this very moment, the tension reaches its peak, as if a taut string is about to snap. While people struggle with the feelings raging within them, the observer from afar turns into an unsolved mystery, an object of close attention and speculation. They are tormented by questions: what is he doing? What is he thinking about? Does he miss them? This elusive uncertainty is like a thin thread that they cannot stop pulling, hoping to unravel the tangle of the unknown. But what really deprives them of peace of mind is not the lack of answers, but the loss of control over the situation. After all, by stepping aside, the observer disrupts the usual course of things, breaks the established order, and the violation of patterns always generates chaos, confusion, and anxiety. And paradoxically, while they are desperately trying to rebuild their world without his participation, he himself is going through a complex process of rethinking and self-discovery. Because the decision to withdraw is not just a simple physical or emotional distancing, it is an act of genuine courage that requires considerable inner strength. It is a look in the mirror and an honest admission: I need personal space, even if others do not understand my choice. And this step, despite its necessity, can be truly frightening, because it is associated with leaving the comfort zone and facing the unknown. Here it is worth pausing for a moment and thinking. If the reader has reached this point, then something in these words resonates in his soul. Perhaps he himself has recently distanced himself from someone, perhaps he has felt the world around him collapsing due to a decision made, or maybe, on the contrary, someone has left him, and he is trying to comprehend the motives of this action. Regardless of the specific situation, it is worth reflecting on how much a person's inner peace depends on others, and what sacrifice he is willing to make to find the long-awaited peace of mind and harmony with himself. The author appeals to the audience with a heartfelt call for self-analysis and rethinking of life values. If the words, "emptiness does not define me, it frees me," resonated in the reader's soul, if he saw in them a reflection of his own experience, the author urges him to share this revelation in the comments. The author encourages you to join the channel, where sharp and uncomfortable questions are raised that can transform the personality. It is emphasized that the painful decision to step aside can become a catalyst for growth for others, because sometimes the best way to help is to give them the opportunity to move forward on their own. This act may not be appreciated immediately, but over time it may turn out to be the greatest gift. The author strongly recommends staying until the end, promising a revelation that can change the perception of relationships, decisions, and, most importantly, oneself.